All right, welcome everybody to the CLC meeting for the Highway 101 Twinning and Avon River Abattoir replacement and causeway upgrading. And I think we'll turn it over to Justin. Well, first of all, actually, maybe we'll just do a quick round of introductions because I don't know that everybody knows each other. Well, I'm quite sure that not everybody knows each other. So I'll start and I'll just call out the people's name as they appear on my participants list because it'll be different on everybody's. I'm Ken Donnelly. I'm the chair of the CLC. I'm also with Beyond Attitude Consulting. Justin, you're next.
Hi there, everybody. Justin Tanner. I've been the lead for public works on this file for the last several years. Welcome. And I'm the one with the power out, so that's why I'm sitting in the dark here. I'm going to turn my camera off to save battery.
Dave Croachman.
I'm having trouble with my mute button here.
We can hear you, Dave.
Okay, yeah, Dave Croachman, I'm here.
Okay, great. Bob Pett.
Yes, Bob Pett, Senior Environmental Scientist with Public Works.
Colin Fisher.
I'm Colin Fisher. I'm a Senior Civil Engineer and Project Manager with CBCL.
Colin Hines.
Colin Hines, a Community Liaison Member, excuse me, from Falmouth.
Melissa Rutherford.
Hi, I'm Melissa Rutherford. I'm with CBCL Limited, and I'm one of the biologists on this project.
And Rick.
Yeah, I'm Rick Giffen, CBCL, Senior Civil Engineer and Project Manager on this project.
And Sheldon Hope.
Yeah, just trying to get off mute there for a sec. Sheldon Hope, Vice Commodore at Pisquid Canoe Club.
Okay, thanks, Sheldon. Mayor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Abraham Zabian, and West Hampton Regional Municipality.
You. Shelley.
I'm Shelley Bibby, former town councilor with the former town of Windsor. I decided to stay on this CLC.
Okay, great. Erica Porter.
Hi, I'm Fisher here in the Avon River, and I'm in place today for my dad, Darren.
Yes, thank you. Darren got called off to another meeting, sent us a note just a little while ago. Graham.
Hi, yeah, Graham Matheson. I'm an environmental analyst with the Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture.
Okay. Jim Ivey.
Evening, everyone. Jim Ivey, Councillor, West Hampton Regional Municipality.
Kevin Beckers.
Thanks, Ken. I'm trouble with video as well. Kevin Beck's Director of Resource Sustainability and part of the project from the beginning.
Liz Galbraith.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm a citizen rep with the Windsor area.
Lyle Russell.
Yeah, I'm Lyle Russell. I'm the Department of Public Works project engineer on the Highway 101 Twinning project.
Mark Brace.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark Brace. I'm the Senior Highway Planning Engineer for Department of Public Works.
Okay, Selena Thornton.
Good evening, Selena Thornton with West Hampton Regional Municipality. I'm the Municipal Operations Supervisor and the Emergency Management Coordinator.
Okay, the names have been bouncing around, so I believe I missed Sonia. Sonia? Sonia's on mute. Okay, well, Sonia is here. And is there anybody else that I missed? Okay, there, in that case, Justin, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Ken, and apologies everybody for the technical difficulties. If we do lose the presentation here at some point, we've got a bit of a backup plan in place, and one of my colleagues will launch it. So just a heads up in case we are interrupted here. So thank you everybody for attending. We recognize we're long overdue for a CLC meeting. It's been almost a year and a half, and we had hoped to be able to meet again in person, but unfortunately with the rise in COVID cases, and to make sure everyone feels comfortable attending, we decided to switch to this format. So in general, we're going to provide an update basically on what's been going on for the past year or so, and this slide here gives a general overview of what we're going to discuss. So first off, we'll provide a little bit of an update on the Highway 101 twinning aspect of the project, and then we'll dive into the Avon River Abbottstown Causeway upgrading, including a bit of a recap to get everybody back up to speed on what the project entails, status update, and then getting a little bit more in depth, CBCL will provide an update on the design and post-construction monitoring plan, and we'll conclude with what the next steps are before we open it up for questions and discussion. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lyle. Lyle, if you're with us and able to speak to the next couple of slides, just let me know when you want me to advance each slide here.
Yeah, good, Justin. Thank you. So this here slide, we always kind of start with this to give people, a general overview as we go through proceed through the next few slides, what we're talking about. So we've kind of broken this project up into multiple sections to kind of make it manageable from a project management side, as well as how do we logistically move traffic, given all the, the amount of work going on. So this slide is basically showing the three sections that we kind of refer to. So section 1 is generally from exit 5 down to just east of exit 5A at the Windsor Railway overpass. And then section 2, we kind of got broken up into two sections. Section 2 is kind of, we got a 2A, which goes from the railway overpass to exit 6. And then 2B is basically from exit 6 into exit 7, the Causeway area. And then section 3 then goes from exit 7 down to the current twinning section just before Hansport. So that's kind of just a general overview. So as we get into the next couple of slides, you'll know kind of where we're at. So the first slide is generally talking about updates to section 1. So generally what we've done so far is we've constructed the new westbound lanes a few years ago. We paved them and we opened them to traffic last year. And then we started working on the eastbound lane. So we did some upgrading to that. And then this fall, winter, we actually paved them. And then now basically section 1 is open to fully divided traffic. And probably today, anyone that's been through the town will notice that the barrels and a lot of the temporary traffic control devices are starting to come down now that we've installed and got the center cable median barrier wrapped up in tent. We're currently, again, with it, we did do the replacement and new construction of two structures at Trunk 14, and then again, the two new structures at Wentworth Road. And we also replaced the Windsor Railway overpass with a new multi-plate structure. And we will be in this section again this spring for a bit. We do have some deficiencies to clean up. There's some shoulder gravels to put on. There's some general cleanup to do. So we will be around, not for a long period of time. It'll be 4 to 6 weeks, but then we'll have that section wrapped up and we'll be out of there for a while. So I guess go ahead, Justin. So here, the next couple slides are just some general photos here. So here you're looking, we're at exit 5, kind of looking west, looking back towards the valley. You can see here we're open to divided traffic here. The next slide is, next slide here is we're at F5A. So you can see the Wentworth Road, the roundabout, and we're looking east back towards Halifax. So here you can see this was taken yesterday. So then barrels and all the temporary traffic control devices have been removed as of today. So now this is a fully divided section of highway. And again, we're still at 5A, but we're looking west in the opposite direction. Same thing. Those temporary devices have been removed and we're open to full divided traffic through this section. So as we get into 2A, so we're basically from that Windsor Railway overpass coming back to exit 6. We have actually went ahead and completed the westbound new lanes. So that was new subgrade work. We've paved it and we've actually opened it to divided traffic as far as exit 6. We do have a temporary transition from 4-lane divided to a new 2-lane, 2-way traffic at the exit 6. As we approach through the causeway, so the causeway is still 2-way, 2-lane. And we have completed the municipal infrastructure crossings, which was on, I think, the last meeting we had. We were talking about some municipal infrastructure crossings that were taking place. Those have been done, so we've improved the municipal crossings. And we're looking at eastbound. So you'll notice that the westbound is done, it's paved, it's opened up to exit 6. And we still have the old eastbound of the existing highway there that needs to be work done. That work's been tendered and awarded, and we will be starting construction for that on that later this fall and into the spring 2023. We'll start working on that to make that from all completely new divided highway up to exit 6. So next slide here is generally we're just kind of looking there. You can see the Windsor Railway overpass there in the both the center of the picture. Basically, we're just showing that we are divided, and we do have some temporary devices there that are still remaining. So you can see kind of where that last car is as you're heading towards Halifax. You can kind of see where the asphalt is stopped. So that's that section I'm talking about eastbound, where we're going to be hooking on and continuing doing some work in the this fall, next spring. So we flick on to the next slide here. Again, you can see a little bit as well, looking in the opposite direction. You can see that we've got it westbound up, and you see where that crossover is happening just at exit 6, and the existing highway there, where we got to do some widening and work. So that's kind of looking westbound. And I don't know what we got for the next slide there, Justin. I guess that's just a little closer picture to show where we're going. We're going from 4-lane divided into 2-lane, 2-way as we approach the causeway up there. So the next phase we have here is section 2B. So we're going between exit 6, exit 7. We're going across the causeway. So what we'll see in a couple slides here is that we've done a lot of the work for the widening the causeway 2 years ago, where we've installed a tow berm to help with the soft soils. We've done some rip drain installation, and we started preloading. As everyone's familiar with the marsh mud there, it is quite soft. So there is a process of settlement that we've started, and we've been monitoring it. You'll see as you drive by some gauges and barrels. That's basically showing some of the monitoring points where we're monitoring that settlement. And we're expected to do another stage of preload sometime this summer to kind of continue with that settlement process. We've also completed the subgrade from the Avon River down to exit 7. So that's been done. That's setting, that's ready for the next phase, which would be gravels and paving. We're also working on an interim safety measure where we've widened the causeway to the, I guess this would be the north, and we start installing some precast jersey barrier to create a separation between east and westbound traffic, a physical barrier. So we've started that, and that work's going to continue this year to finish right to exit 7. Exit 6, you'll notice in the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of work happening at the exit 6 interchange. And that is a kind of a longer term project. We expect that to be about 18, 20 months. So we are expecting a completion in fall 2023. And we've also continued to work on, and it's getting well underway now, the exit 7 interchange in Falmouth. And we do expect to complete that this fall. So if we move into a couple pictures here, so this is the new start to exit 6. So this is the exit 6 interchange just beginning underway. You can kind of see we're removing the ramp. There's new retaining walls going in there. There's some upgrading municipal services going in there. And there will be the abutment will be going there for the new structure. And to the left, I think Justin's point, that's kind of where that structure is going to be going, because as you can see that pile of rock there, that is where the new Nesbitt Street connector road or Upper Water Street will be. And I don't know where do we got the next. I think the next one here, yeah. So here is the what will be the new lanes across the causeway. So this is where we've widened the causeway to account for that. So this is where we're monitoring the settlement. You can kind of see there's a little bit of barrels there. It's kind of hard to see in the slide, but those are where the monitoring points are. The berm is out to the right where there's an access road. So that there's just setting there, settling, and that's where we're at. And we do expect to do another lift of material on that this summer. And I think the next slide here should be looking to the east. Yep, and this is the section that's complete and ready for gravels and paving. That's between the Avon River and exit 7. So this one here, you kind of get a real good sense on what the new highway alignment across the causeway is going to look like. So basically where you see that mound there, that's kind of where the two mounds are coming together at the Avon River. That's where the two new structures or two new bridges are going to accommodate the new highway lanes. And we go on to the next one, which is section 3. So this is kind of an update on section 3. So the eastbound lanes have been completed, and probably most people notice that they're paved, and it's set in there. I'll talk about that in a second. The new wildlife structure, we did put a wildlife or deer crossing structure in this section, and that is now officially completed. And we did finish the extension to the Elgin Creek box culvert. And we did also upgrade, again, some municipal infrastructure, water, sewer crossings. That was fell in this section as well. So this summer, fall, you will see this section of highway open. So we will be doing the connections and tie-ins of those new eastbound lanes on both the east side and the west side. So we'll tie that in, and we will be upgrading and resurfacing the existing highway, which will become the new westbound lane. So that will be happening this summer into the fall. We do expect to complete it this fall. And I think, again, we got a couple slides here. This is kind of just the exit 7 interchange. So right here, the guys are working on the foundation for the center pier. So the abutments are to the left and right of that. Yep, perfect there. So that's where the new structure is going to be. We're going to get the center pier constructed here shortly. Then we'll be able to get girders on. We're planning hopefully for early June to set girders and then start our deck form work and go from there. So we are targeting fall to finish and open this interchange. And I think the next slide is, yeah, we're just looking east towards exit 7. We're kind of in between the Falmouth railway line is what we see there, the railway structure, and the trunk one overpass. So we're just giving a general idea of what the twinning looks like through here. Next slide, I think we are looking at the completed wildlife structure. So the wildlife structure is there. So here the deer and other wildlife are able to trek, basically across the highway safely without getting into the highway. We do have some wildlife fencing, deer fencing installed. We are going to do some improvements. We have noticed there's still a few issues with it. There will be some improvements being completed this summer on that. And in the center, you see kind of like a little atrium sunroom thing there. That's a lot, basically light to allow the deer to cross. So it kind of brings light into the tunnel, makes it more enticing for them to come through. And I think the next slide is, oh no, we did have one more. So here we are looking, we're looking west. This is the twin section. And at the very top of the picture there, you can see that connection is what we're talking about for this summer, making that connection and joining that into the existing twinning. So that's, I think that's a general overview. I think Justin, I think of all the slides there for the current Highway 101 twinning and where we're standing and what we got for the future.
Thank you, Lyle. Are there any questions for Lyle? Please put up your hand if you have a question. My dog wants to speak, apparently. Sorry about that. I don't see any hands up, Lyle, so thank you very much for that.
Liz Galbraith has a hand up, but
Oh.
she's using her physical. There you go.
Okay. Okay. Liz, sorry.
I just wanted to ask if there was going to be any disruption of traffic till completion, and any long delays that we might expect.
Yeah, so I guess with any construction, especially when we get to the point we start doing the tie-ins, there will be delays, there will be temporary traffic control, stop road traffic. So yeah, this summer you're going to see some traffic delays for sure, especially when we get to the point that we tie in that picture there where we're looking at on the slide deck there now. There will be some delays.
Any other questions? Right. Okay, that's Liz. Liz, are you? I see your hand clapping, but
Yeah, I just wanted to, with the traffic delays, is there any way we could have some forewarning of that so that it could go on the radio a day or two ahead so that people can maybe plan their trips accordingly, as opposed to turning the corner and finding themselves in a long line? Is that at all possible?
Yeah, so the radio, so I guess the answer to that, the standard departmental thing when it comes to stop and go traffic is it does go up usually on our 511 site, usually a week prior to. And it also, we do have our traffic notifications and announcements that are on the Nova Scotia government website. It does go up there as well. So I know some people don't have any access to internet. Our 511 site, I believe, or our traffic notifications, one or the other, we do have a 1-800 number you can call and get the updated traffic delays for any section of highway. But typically we don't generally put them up unless it's like a long-term closure where we expect some major problems. But generally we don't put it on the radio. But it's something that can be considered.
Hey, Lyle, it's Bob here. We can potentially put announcement up to the CLC and the CLC members can help spread it too.
No, that's a good point, Bob. And I guess another thing that I've actually just started doing here recently, try to help with some of the communication, especially since we started around the exit 6 area, the downtown. We've engaged the municipalities from kind of helping out get the message out as well. So the municipality has been helpful trying to get that message out as well. So we'll continue working with them as well, get some of that information.
Okay, thank you. Colin Hines. Sorry, there's 2 columns.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Lyle, just a quick question. You're talking about the settlement. Were there any surprises with that? I know that was something a lot of people were looking and saying, they're going to put rock in that soup and it's just going to disappear. Like, was there any surprises with how much settlement there is, or how much fill you need to put in there? Can you speak to that just a little?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, like I said, we've been monitoring since we started that project. I guess that was fall, I think spring 2022 or 20. So we've been monitoring the settlement now for, I guess, a good portion of 2 years. So far, we monitor it. We send it to our geotechnical team, and they kind of analyze it and look at the theoretical, what they expect, based on the conditions they've done during the drill program. And they've been basically telling us so far that everything's been trending almost identical to exactly what they had theoretically predicted. So yeah, no surprises as of yet. Given the way it's gone for the last 2 years, we're not expecting any surprises as we continue the next phase of that program.
Great, thanks a lot.
Jim Ivey.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ken. And I think to you as well, Lyle. Thanks very much for the information. Just one question. So exit 6, it looks like it's closed for the next 2022-23 rounding if you end up at 20 months, just for simplicity here. I don't want to bore down really deep on that, but just so with the exit 6 heading eastbound closed, exit 5A is the target, or the one that's referenced on the flashing sign up the road and so on. The one question I do have is actually related to exit 7. Do you see that being closed off at some point in time over the next, say, the 20 months that exit 6 is closed, that we would see both of those out of operation at some point in time, or is exit 7's off ramp pretty much stabilized that it's going to be open throughout the next 20 months?
No, so yeah, no, good question. So no, exit 7 ramp is pretty well stabilized. We're kind of set up here now that we're planning. There's no plan to have 2 ramps closed at the same time. So exit 7 is pretty well stabilized there now. I don't know if I got a good picture of it, but we do have a ramp in. There is some work that needs to be done to it, but we'll have to look through how we phase that. And it may be a matter of doing some sort of ramp splitting or something along that lines. But right now, there's no plan to have both off ramps in the eastbound direction closed.
Thank you very much for that. And I mean, part of the reason for the question is that it's the quickest route to downtown Windsor is coming in through exit 7. It's same direction, no looping around and so forth, right? And so it's just that as people build up patterns of behavior and repetition, just kind of anticipating if there'll be a change required in their behavior down the road that we can pre-prep them for, or if it looks like it's pretty much an open course for them coming through that route.
Yeah, no, understandable. Yep.
Thanks, Jim. Shalina Thornton.
Hi there. I'd just like to say thank you to Lyle. He has communicated with us here at the municipality with respects to posting information on our website. But with summer delays and or other closures, I just thought I'd let you know that we also put out a quarterly newsletter. So although not everybody has access to the internet, if I can get perhaps more than a week's notice, I don't need definitive dates even, but perhaps just some general information that maybe it's July or August, and I can make sure I put a little plug in that newsletter in early July and direct people to the 511 website. So that just might help spread the word as well, especially through the summer months. So we can touch base on that at a later time, but that's just another thing to consider as well, because we have many tools that we use for communication.
Well, that's good. Yeah, we'll touch base on, maybe we'll get some sort of a further update out there regarding traffic conditions. That'd be good. That'd be good. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Shalina. Liz?
Thanks. I'm having trouble with my raised hand there. I don't know if I've got a question quota or something that just won't stay lit now. I don't know. But 2 things. If exit 7 is going to stay open, could we consider using that as an alternate route in addition to 5A, kind of further to what Jim was saying, just so it balances the traffic between those 2 exits. Also, if you're able to do radio, I think that would really be ideal, because our group can only really communicate with the Windsor, West Hants area, but where the traffic coming through is from all the way up the valley, which we really don't have access to get the word out. So if you're able to, within a day or two, use the radio, that would obviously be ideal. And also, can you have lit signs on both entryways to the construction zone, letting drivers know what to be expecting within the next couple of days and so forth, so that they can, the more advanced notice people have and the more options people have, the less frustrated they're going to be.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of things in there. So I guess the first one I'll touch on is the exit 7 as the detour route. So one of the things that when the department does look at a detour route, they have to look at, a general driver behavior. So I guess the reason why you see exit 5A listed as the official detour route is what we're concerned about is if people are driving along, they're not really realizing that they wanted to get off, say at exit 6. We have to catch those drivers that miss exit 6, miss exit 7, say exit 7 the detour route. So we need to catch them and get them spun back around and get them off. Historically, signing ahead of time has caused issues in that manner. The other issue is signing, I guess, two detour routes has been confusing for drivers on the other as well. So typically we try to assign the next exit after the closed exit is the detour route, just for simplicity's sake. Now, anyone familiar with say the Windsor area, especially coming from the valley, will know to probably jump off at exit 7. But that's kind of what we've done. I can certainly pass the comment off to our traffic authority and see if they have additional comment on, whether or not there's benefit, and maybe it's not just the detour. Maybe it's a matter of putting an additional message on that verbal message board that's currently out there before exit 7. So I'll touch base with our traffic authority on that, get a comment, and maybe there is an alternate route that we could do there. Radio, I'll put that, I got that written down here. We'll see what we can do to try to get that out and see if, we can help improve some communications. And verbal message boards, absolutely. So that's something that has become kind of a standard in the departmental contracts, especially for the 100 series highways over the last year or two, is to put verbal message boards up. So that we will be deploying verbal message boards for this coming year. And we'll make sure to try to get some good verbiage on there. And maybe it is, you're right, maybe the best thing to do, instead of waiting to the day of construction, throwing that verbal message board up, we get it up, a week early and say, FYI, on Monday, we're going to be starting stop and go traffic here, plan accordingly. So yeah, no, that's a good idea. I'll look at putting that in for maybe a week early or something.
Thank you for that, Lyle, and thanks for your consideration of the suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And Liz, there's no quota on questions, so I'm not quite sure what's happening with your hand raising. So there's nothing that would be preventing it anyways, that I know of at least. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands showing. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Lyle, thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy.
And Justin?
Yeah, thank you, Lyle. That was a great overview. And I've got my power back, so that's good news as well. Hopefully this will be a little more seamless and reliable. So thank you, everybody. I'll kind of kick off the next section of this presentation, providing a general update, recap, and status update on the Avon River, Abateaux, and Causeway upgrade components. And then we are going to turn it over to CBCL to get into a little more detail on the design progress. So just to first recap, the primary objectives of this project from the beginning and from a provincial perspective have been to improve public safety. So enhanced flood protection is the big one associated with the Abateaux. So to ensure climate change resilience and to protect against flood risks and vulnerability to sea level rise in the future. And this is also coupled with the need to protect critical public infrastructure, communities of Windsor, Falmouth, and surrounding areas, as well as valuable agricultural land. Improved highway safety, obviously from Public Works perspective, is a major objective as well. So through completing the twinning of Highway 101 across the Avon River, while also benefiting from the flood control system to protect the highway and the associated bridges. And that's why this project was kind of pursued in a coordinated way to address both of these public safety needs. Other requirements, in addition to meeting those public safety objectives I just mentioned, the project also must satisfy several regulatory requirements. So improved fish passage. Many people are aware that that is a major requirement of this project and it must be in compliance with the Fisheries Act through DFO, as well as the environmental assessment conditions through Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change. And with both of these, we must also consider potential impacts to asserted or established Mi'kmaq Aboriginal or treaty rights. Also, minimizing environmental and social impacts are key objectives for any infrastructure project. And we do this through obtaining the appropriate permits and authorizations and satisfying several PA terms and conditions. And one thing I just think is a little bit important to note for context, the Fisheries Act was updated in June of 2019, which was over a year into the design process. So, you know, unfortunately, that has influenced the federal requirements and expectations since the project was first initiated, and obviously has presented some challenges and some delays in the early stages of the project. But I think that's important to highlight because not everyone may be aware of that. So a brief overview of the different project components, and I'm just going to bring my pointer up here. The existing Abateaux is located at the bottom of the screen here and is going to be replaced with a new Abateaux downstream located in this area right here. The project also includes raising the causeway, as Lyle touched on a little bit, as well as expansion and upgrading of the dike system to tie into the existing flood protection system. And the new highway will also feature 2 twin bridges over the Avon River that are built separately from the Abateaux, but are going to be protected by it. So this allows for long-term protection of the highway and of the bridges from the Bay of Fundy tides. This slide here basically shows some other upgrades that are being done beyond this project to complete the flood protection system in the area. So the one labeled as Project A here is this project, which we've been discussing and many are very familiar with. But the 2 projects identified as B and C are the other upgrades and enhancements to the existing dike corridor to complete the community flood protection system. So these 3 elements in combination will basically complete and enhance the flood protection for the Windsor and Falmouth area. Those 2 projects, I should note, because they're existing dike corridors, they do fall under the Agricultural Marshland Conservation Act and therefore are exempt from the EA process and not part of the current project. And lastly, to recap, the design approach for the Abateaux and the causeway upgrading has been to focus on a flexible and adaptable solution. So one that meets both the needs today, but also is adaptable and flexible to meet the needs in the future. So the Abateaux has been designed with a wide range of functionality for both flood protection and fish passage, and includes a range of potential operating scenarios. One of which being maintaining a freshwater lake, and this was initially proposed to DFO in our application of 2020, but following that application in March of last year, it was deemed inadequate for fish passage. And actually the following spring is when DFO implemented the current ministerial order, which has changed how the current or existing Abateaux has been operating ever since. The other two scenarios that we've been focusing on are what's considered a brackish lake scenario. So this scenario basically allows some tidal exchange through the Abateau, but maintains a fairly consistent water level upstream that would be similar or comparable to what that historic lake level was, but it would be higher in salinity and sediment as you would expect in more brackish conditions. And the last one listed here is a dampened tidal scenario. So it also can allow a greater degree of tidal exchange and creating basically a more natural estuarine environment. Next, I wanted to just provide a little bit of an update on two key items. The first being the DFO Fisheries Act authorization. So as I mentioned, our original application was submitted to DFO in November of 2020. And it focused on a freshwater lake operating scenario only, but with the ability to be adapted to those other operating scenarios I just described in the future. DFO responded that following March that the application was incomplete and inadequate, and they requested additional information that focused on the other operating scenarios that included tidal exchange. So with this statement, they were basically saying that the freshwater lake scenario was not adequate and did not meet the Fisheries Act. So a supplemental information package was submitted to DFO the following August. This contained quite a bit of additional modeling and analysis to address several of DFO's initial questions and comments that came in March of that year. And since August, we've had several meetings that have taken place to review and discuss this information and subsequent analysis to address DFO's comments. Currently, further modeling assessments are nearly complete to address DFO's latest comments and to provide them with the confidence that the new Abateau will function and accommodate fish appropriately. In terms of the project development, and this is my last slide before I turn it over to CBCL, but in terms of the project development, you know, there's been extensive modeling and analysis, as I just mentioned, to improve the Abateau design and optimize it for fish passage, address several of the comments we received from DFO. That's been a significant effort over the last year. Also, final construction drawings for the Abateau and the associated infrastructure are all nearing completion, with the intent of us being ready or construction ready late this spring. That's what we're currently targeting. So these construction documents and drawings include basically the overall civil and site works for the whole area. So any removals, temporary works, grading of the site, the new dike infrastructure, and the new realigned channel. This package or these design packages also include the design details for the new Abateau structure, the new control building, which will be used to operate the Abateau and also house NSDA staff. The new Highway 101 bridges, detailed design packages for both the eastbound and westbound bridge structures that will be protected by the Abateau, construction specifications, cost estimates, and several other supporting construction documents. So those are all well in progress. We're actually beyond 95% complete on all of those. So CBCL has done a lot of great work to get those ready as we submit the final information to DFO and anxiously wait an approval to proceed with construction. So with that, I will turn it over to Colin. I believe you're going to speak to these next few slides.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Thanks for everyone for joining and listening in, and feel free to put your hand up and ask any questions along the way as usual. As Justin mentioned, you know, we've been really for the last year and a half, you know, working hard to you know, go back and forth with DFO in particular to satisfy their requirements. So, you know, a lot of the work over the past couple of years since we've last met has been associated with that. So, you know, the modeling and analysis completed to refine the Abateau design, you know, has really been largely focused, you know, on maintaining the original project objectives of flood control and while optimizing fish passage. So what we've been doing, and there's a few figures that'll be coming after this slide to show some of these items, but I'll talk about them briefly, and we'll talk about them a bit more on the following slides. But you know, we've been working at optimizing the design of the fishways, and associated conditions for fish passage to maximize the ability for all fish species and life stages expected to want passage. And that's, one of the things that makes this extremely complex, because, it's everything from, baby eels all the way up to Bay of Fundy salmon or even sturgeon, are expected to be interested in passing from time to time. So, we're doing our best to find a balance that, improves the conditions for all of those species. So to do this, we have added a dedicated eel pass, which is new since the last time we've met to speak about this. So it provides an additional dedicated means for their passage. We've optimized the design of the river channel at the entrances and exits of the fishways to provide safe and passable conditions and favorable attraction flows. We've been going through, now that the design is much more detailed and defined, it's allowed us to refine our physical, or I wouldn't say physical, but the actual shape of the abato and associated components to allow us to have a much more detailed model in order to estimate water velocities in specific locations throughout the structure, which helps us to assess fish passage success. And that's been one of the key areas that DFO has been pushing us along to answer very specific questions in certain areas about velocities and turbulence and all related to certain species and how they are known to or not known in some cases to like to pass through these types of areas. In order to do that, there's a number of very complex hydrodynamic computer models that all kind of work together, but are all in some cases standalone. So it's a lot of work to work back and forth with them, and we've been leveraging I guess a very high tech, cutting edge computer array based out of St. FX, actually, to allow us to do this as quickly as possible, so that we can effectively run models on dozens of computers at the same time to speed things up. But they still take weeks and sometimes months for some of these models to process, and hopefully don't crash along the way and set us back and start all over again. So that's part of what's taken so long to answer some of these questions. Associated with that, one of the key areas that we've been continuing to refine is how the water is controlled as it goes through, or how it can be controlled as it goes through the structure, in terms of how the various channels and gates are able to be operated. And as Justin said, there's a wide range of scenarios that these can be operated to achieve a number of objectives. But at the end of the day, we have to satisfy the regulatory requirements and mitigate flood risk. So that's always the goal for these various design efforts, I guess. So based on feedback from DFO, we have been focusing on the operating scenarios involved with tidal exchange, which include the brackish lake and dampened tidal scenarios that Justin suggested earlier. One of the most recent modifications of the Cape design allowed for a vertical slot in the main channel itself to provide more passage opportunities at all water depths for various species that like to swim at different depths and in different velocities and different conditions, and to avoid significant pressure drops for any fish or other types of species that want to use this but don't find their way to the fishways or the eel passes themselves, to avoid large pressure changes as they're going through the main channels, which are primarily the kind of the flood control channels, we'll say. So there is more water that goes through the middle areas of the structure, but the design is such that the slots on the sides of the fishways are designed to have slower, calmer water that is more appealing for fish to pass through. Next slide, please. So this is a 3D model of the overall structure. We do have a link there, so we can float around. Now, I don't know if you want to get into that, Justin, or if you wanted to pass it to me, but maybe if you want to try clicking on the link to see if you can float around a little bit just to move it, I find is better to give people an appreciation for the various bits and pieces of the structure itself.
Just one
want me
moment,
just to
guys. I'm
share?
gonna have to. Yeah, you may want to share just instead there, Colin, then we'll jump back to my screen here.
That's what we'll do. All right, can everybody see that?
No change yet.
Change.
Oh,
Here, I will.
I have to actually hit the share button, so I think it's probably good now. Is it moving around?
Yeah, we're seeing it now, Colin.
Perfect. So I'll just start at the top here, so you can see this is kind of what it looks like from the top down. This is the Bay of Fundy side, and this is the Lake Pesiquid side. So you can see here, I'm going to go and look at the end view for now, so you can kind of see clearly where the main openings are here. Fishways are on either side. You can see sort of some of the baffle structures are inside, and then this is actually the eel pass here. You can see there's some significant retaining walls to allow us to control scour and erosion around the structure, and to contain the embankment and dike slopes. There's an access bridge on the top and a number of catwalks and manways to allow for maintenance and whatnot. What's not shown here, are the gates. There's a series of gates that are planned here, including what we call a passive flap gate, which is sort of a traditional Abateau gate, as well as roller gates. There's a few versions of the flap gates themselves for the main openings, as well as emergency backup in case there was, a blockage of some sort or something stuck in the main opening, so that in case of a blockage at the worst time where maybe you have a major storm happening, there's always a safety net for that to be relieved, I guess. Yeah, so that's that. You can kind of see the front end here. There's a few additional features that have been added to improve flow conditions, to smooth the flow of water around the ends of the structure, again to accommodate or improve potential fish passage. Yeah, I think it's probably a good overview. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just do a quick little slice through here and show sort of the inner workings of this, to see kind of generally how each part is. So I'm just going to go and stop at the fishway initially, so you can kind of see what that looks like. So this is one of the two fishways, so they're the same on either side. And you can see there's a ramp to help control velocities within the structure, and then these ladder-looking items are actually baffles, which help slow the water down within the fishway and make it more appealing to fish. I'm going to slide into the eel pass. It's not very wide, so sometimes it's hard to hit. What's going on there? There it is. So you can see there, it's also a ramp, but it has sort of landings or resting areas. This is about, I think it was about half of the maximum slope that you can use for these types of facilities. So it'll have almost like a really coarse AstroTurf, or it's almost like a Plinko board that you would see that would be placed on this ramp, so that the small eels can wiggle their way up through the structure. And it doesn't matter if the water is low or high. Apparently they'll use it either way. We do have a water supply system that ensures that this ramp stays wet at all times, as well as a washing system that allows it to be flushed of sediment. That's been one of the major design considerations throughout the entire project, is the amount of sediment that is carried in the water here. Presents significant challenges for maintaining structures like this and ensuring they always operate the way they're intended and don't have buildups in areas and cause problems. You can see there's lots of supporting struts. This is a very large structure. This is approximately 20 meters tall by 20 meters wide, for 25 meters wide, I guess, for the main part of the structure, not including the wing walls. So, the forces included, or the forces that we're dealing with here are very, very large. So you can see here, as I keep going in, you get a sense of what the inner workings of the main channels look like. These are all structures to hold gates, both the roller gates and then the flap gates, as well as stop logs for maintenance, so that we can close off the structure in case there's a problem or just regular maintenance to complete. And you'll see the sort of the inner structure of this is a little bit different from one side to the other. As there are slightly different gate configurations and operating requirements for both the brackish and the tidal scenarios. So, that's where the design flexibility comes into play. And then, like I said, the fishway on the other side is just a mirror image of the other. So, did anybody have any questions there? I know there's a lot to take in right here, so I thought maybe this would be a good time to allow people to put their hand up. Yes, Liz?
Yeah, I've got questions. Can you confirm the hierarchy of control over the abattoir? Who owns it, who's going to run it, and who makes the decisions on it?
I will throw that question over to Justin.
I may throw that to Kevin. Kevin, are you still around? Do you want to answer that, given it's owned and operated by agriculture?
Yes, don't know if my video is working, but trying to click some buttons here. So yes, we are the client, the Department of Agriculture. We operate the existing infrastructure, and we will be operating the new infrastructure. There has been some discussions about having a governance committee involved in that, representing various stakeholders and right holders and DFO. So some of it will fall under the regulator of how it will be operated. And they have asked us to provide an operational scenario with the structure, and that's where a lot of the work has been focused on this past year and a half, as Colin and Justin have described. So I'll pause there and see if that's answered your question.
It has partially. Will there be a resolution process for conflicting priorities within that management team? And I'll just throw another question in there as well. Can you confirm that there's a system in place, or will be in place, to be aware of fish movement for maximum effect, kind of like an early warning system, so that we don't have a bunch of, one species or another, or a big lineup at the gate not getting through because, hey, they're 2 weeks early from their usual time frame.
So a little complex to answer in all that detail. My understanding is from the operating scenario, we're going to have dedicated fishways that are open 24/7. So there'll be some minor adjustments and tweaks on that in a major flood event. But the idea is to be able to pass fish 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, or 365 days a year. So DFO is not looking for any stockpiling of fish outside of the gates in one direction or the other. And as far as, resolution aspects, we're looking for an operating scenario, and it would be more about communication and awareness and, what's working and having discussions. But I don't know if there would be acceptance of a resolution that we want to change X, Y, Z. There'll be a set operating procedure on that.
I was thinking conflicting priorities as we go along, not in terms of policy, but just in procedure on a time by time basis.
Yes, and it's hard to speculate on. Yeah, hard to speculate on what they may be. So community flood protection would be number one and fish passage is number two. And whatever we can do to the maximum extent possible after that is how we would like to do it.
Okay. I have a question for Lyle. No, for Lyle, from back, I have two questions for Lyle. Just because it's been a long time since we've met, can you confirm the speed limit through the corridor once it's completed?
Yeah, so as soon as we complete and our full 4-lane divide, the highway will be 110.
Okay. And can you confirm that we're going to have a hopper lane? I call it a hopper lane at the far right for local traffic between exits throughout the entire construction corridor?
Yep, that's correct. So the farthest right lane on between 5, 5A, 5A, 6, and 6 and 7 will all be just connected ramp lanes. So yeah, it'll be quick. Basically, that'll be a ramp lane between all exits. Yep.
Sweet. And I have a question for Colin. How do the different species know which lane to take?
That's up to them. We provide I guess as wide range of conditions that would mimic natural conditions the best we can, and depending on the time of the day, the cycle of where the tide is in the cycle, water temperatures and so on, they're all going to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and that again is probably the single biggest challenge of this particular endeavor, is to try to find that balance. So our focus has been more on providing I guess a window of velocities within certain areas that we know the majority of various fish species like to travel, and that's not just necessarily one area. That includes the bottom dwelling benthic species, as well as species that prefer to swim at the top. So that's all part of the analysis process. But I'm not sure what else I could say there in terms of.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. If nobody has any other questions on kind of the structure itself, I'll touch on a few other things here as we go. So this is more just a top view of the structure, again, just to show the dike itself and how it matches into the channel a bit more. Again, you can see the top is the Bay of Fundy side, where you've got sort of the rounded noses on either side to smooth the flow of water in and out of the fishways. And then at the upstream end, you can see sort of a similar rounded area, but slightly different just because of the different conditions and the various site constraints that we've had. Next slide. This is just a quick representation of one of the scenarios of how water will be within the fishways. You can see the ramp is intended to hold the water along the fishway at a specific depth, and that's one of the design challenges is the various scenarios have different operating water elevations. So the structure is designed so that we can actually alter the high end of that ramp, whether it's tidal or whether it's brackish, to optimize the flow of water through those fishways and ensure that the velocity stay within those optimum ranges for the fish. Next slide. And this is just a cutaway of the inside of the structure, again, to show sort of how water is going through there. And this one is nice because it shows the gates, the red. Now, in this case, the flap gates, the ones on the side that you see on a bit of an angle, they're not necessarily going to be employed. They're, again, sort of a design option at this point. They're required for one scenario, but not necessarily for the other. We see the majority of the flow control being established with the roller gate, which is the vertical line there, and then the two smaller ones at the upper part of that. Those are the emergency overflow flap gates that, you know, if the roller gate and then the other flap gate happen to be stuck for closed for whatever reason, those upper flap gates will be allowed to open to ensure that there's no flooding issues upstream. And just to be clear, you know, there are fish shown there. You know, we expect that some fish will happen to travel back and forth through the structure, especially when the water level upstream and the water level downstream are similar. So in that case, there won't be, you know, a significant pressure change on either side, so the velocity through the gate opening won't be too excessive. But you know, that is the you know, the kind of the core of the technical challenge of this project, is to deal with that velocity, and that's why we have the vertical slots on either side that allow the water to climb up and down at whatever depth it wants, and be much more favorable for fish. And this is just a cutaway of how the eel pass or the eel ramp will work. And I think I explained that you know, generally on the previous one a little more than I had intended. So you know, you can see there's a water supply, and you know, the water downstream will, you know, go up and down. At times it'll be nearly completely submerged, but this is a you know, kind of a worldwide accepted way of passing eels, which is probably the simplest part of the design, to be honest. This is fairly easy compared to the other components, which you know, is very unique, and you know, we haven't found anything else in the world that has a situation like this to deal with. So yeah, just wanted to touch on the operational scenarios a little bit. Again, you know, for both of the brackish and dampened tidal scenarios, which we've been encouraged to focus on. The dedicated fishways and eel pass are always open for both of these scenarios, except for maintenance or the odd, you know, extreme storm event where we may you know, where we may find that you know, all the gates should be closed to ensure that the town of Windsor is protected. But we don't expect that to be you know, that's not very frequently at all. The brackish lake scenario does allow some tidal exchange while maintaining a constant water level. That's the key aspect of this, and that water level is equivalent to the historic target water level that Lake Pesiquid has been operated at. And the dampened tidal scenario allows for a larger amount of tidal exchange and a more Justin, you said that word a lot better than I'm going to try. Estuarian, or I can't say it. Estuary environment. And it'll fluctuate by, you know, 1.5 to 2 meters. You know, probably a little less than the full range most of the time that we see here. And the level of the upstream, you know, is likely going to be a little bit higher than what's there now, but we don't have a ton of current data on you know, I guess the upstream level fluctuations as it's been operated for the last little while. I think that's what's up next there, Justin. So this is an image of what the lake surface would look like in the brackish lake scenario. So again, quite similar to what you've seen prior to I guess 2021 when the ministerial order was in place. Next slide.
And just important to note here, maybe a couple notes. The blue is just for illustration purposes. So with the influx of salt water, there also comes the influx of sediments. So just to be aware that, you know, the areas closer to the Bay of Fundy would be more brownish in color. And the other thing I wanted to touch on too, Colin, is just that with the brackish lake and dampened tidal scenario, like we recognize there are some concerns in the community around dust. Especially when the mud flats get very dry. This is something that you know, would be resolved, I guess, under both of these operating conditions. We wouldn't expect those dust conditions to exist.
And yeah, this is just this is actually this is some information that we've had. We may have even showed this to you a while back, but this is just a representation of what we expect the salinity to look like, and I think you can generally look at this and imagine that the color of the water and the sediment would be a similar gradient anyway of change. So the lighter colors in these images show more saline. So the 30 PSU would be similar to what you would have in the Bay of Fundy and the downstream river. But then as you get to the dark blue being 0, obviously that would be fresh water. And for reference, I think 3 PSU is one of the points that we look at, from Ski Maritock's perspective. Obviously we want it completely fresh, but I think it is that operation would be somewhat tolerant to a little bit of salinity, but not very much. So that's been an area that we've been obviously focused on. And the Ski Maritock intake is actually off of the page of that particular map down where it says 3.3 in the scale down below. So it's down in that area. So you can see the two side by side is I guess the season is weighs heavily on what salinity you see within the lake. The reason being is that in the wetter months, winter and spring, you have a lot more precipitation and runoff. So that runoff tends to push and hold back the salinity from creeping its way up the lake as the tide cycles through. Because as the tide cycles, it tends to build a little bit within the lake and slowly make its way further and further upstream, unless there's a flushing flow that can push it back downstream. So that's why the dry periods you see, the salinity is a little bit, does tend to creep a little further up. And again, this is the brackish lake scenario. And I'll show the same thing for the tidal scenario here in a minute. So this is the dampened tidal scenario. So you can see what the expected water level at low tide is to look like. And the next one is what it would look like at high tide. So I don't know if you want to just skip back and forth a couple times just to give people. I guess you can see sort of the dark colors. Is effectively the high tide, and the blue there is the low tide. And I think what Justin was alluding to there in terms of the dust issue is we expect that depending on which scenario is selected, if it's kept running in a consistent fashion, it is expected that there'd be a reestablishment of salt marshes on a lot of these mud flat areas that would resolve a lot of the issues there. So this is an image of the dampened tidal estuary. So again, you can see because there's a lot more tidal exchange happening here. You can see, especially in the dry periods, that the salinity does push further upstream in summer and fall. But then again, in the wet periods, so winter and spring, it's significantly less, I guess, intrusion of the salt further upstream. So I know one of the questions that Liz had was around the post-construction monitoring plan. There is I guess maybe before I jump into that, I should ask if there's any questions on the design, because I'm going to jump to the post-construction monitoring plan, and Melissa's going to take over from here. But maybe I'll look for hands and we can go from there. Ken, maybe I see like there's multiple hands, so I'll let you direct traffic there.
Sheldon, go ahead.
Yeah, just curious. I see the salinity stuff is on there, but what I don't see is anything on the sediment deposits, and I know that was part of what was brought up. Some of the early design scenarios is that there's significant sediment coming in with each tide, And we continue to build up those mud flats. In either of these scenarios, have we modeled what that looks like, 5 years out, 10 years out, et cetera?
Yes, there has been modeling done on the sediment accumulation. I think the tidal scenario is expected to carry more sediment in, but at the same time carry more sediment out. So, I would say, I think the expectation is that there will be a buildup of sediment, particularly on the lake closest to the highway. And I think we do have more details on that. I don't have it here with me, but if you reach out to Justin or even DFO, I think they do have more information on that from us that we should be able to provide.
And did you have a follow-up?
No, I think that's information that's pretty critical, though. It's something that certainly we need as the canoe club in terms of what remains at the end of this, depending on what the operating scenario is, and what does the downtown look like. I would suspect people are very interested in that overall. So I say sediment deposits get sort of downplayed in this whole thing.
Yeah, I understand.
Colin Hines.
Okay, yeah, just a quick question on the dampened tidal, and then on the excuse me, on the brackish estuary, and maybe it was there, maybe I just didn't catch it, but the fluctuations on the water levels on the upstream side of the causeway of the structure during those two scenarios, obviously during the dampened tidal, there's going to be significantly more fluctuation than the other option. Can you just speak to those a little bit? Like,
sure.
I'm standing on the shoreline in Windsor under the two scenarios. What am I going to see as far as the water levels that I'm looking at?
Under the brackish scenario, you're going to see a water level very similar to what you have traditionally seen, or at least seen over the past 40 years. Okay. There might be a half a meter change up and down, during significant storm events, and during periods of dry or wet, there can be a little bit of additional fluctuation, but generally speaking, it's quite close to the existing or the original lake, we'll say. For the tidal exchange option, the tidal exchanges, or the level of the upstream lake is expected to be most of the time in the 1.5 meter range between low tide and high tide. And again, during larger storm events or larger tides or combination thereof, that range could reach in the 2 meter range or so.
Colin, just to add to that, maybe just for additional reference, I think we've determined the low tide under dampened tidal would be somewhat close to what you're seeing there today under the ministerial order, possibly slightly higher in elevation a little bit. And then the high tide under dampened tidal would be about 2 feet below that historic lake level that has been around for several decades. So it's about 2 feet lower at high tide, and a little bit higher than what you're seeing today under the ministerial order at low tide.
Okay, and just a follow up, and I guess maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm assuming this information is all going off to DFO. They're going to look at it and say, okay, are they going to, is it the intent or the assumption that they will come back and say one or the other is the option that they want it to be operated on, or is there going to be variability in those operating scenarios?
Justin, I guess at this point, we propose these two scenarios as sort of, I'll call them bookends. It could be operated, at least as far as we're concerned, in between these, to any degree. Although this is something that we've struggled a little bit to be quite frank with getting guidance from DFO. It's not really their mandate to kind of engage and participate in the design process. They typically just say yes or no.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a challenging process for us to design to a target that we don't know what it is.
Yeah, right.
So we've done our best to establish what we think are reasonable targets based on a wide range of things. And that's kind of what they've been based upon to date.
Great. Yeah, it's good.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, and I just, just to kind of lead into Melissa's conversation here, I think one of the key aspects here is that, there will be an extensive post-construction monitoring plan, which, I think answers a question that Liz had asked earlier, and I'm not sure we actually gave her an answer to that, but, there's going to be years and years of study done on fish populations upstream and downstream, and instrumentation within the structure and downstream of the structure and upstream of the structure and in other tributaries as controls, which Melissa will get into here afterwards, that will allow us and DFO and transportation to monitor how successful this structure is being at achieving the project goals, and obviously the main one being, in this case, or the context of the conversation being fish passage. So I guess my guess is what's going to happen is DFO is going to tell us what they don't want in terms of conditions on any kind of approval that we're going to get, and then it's going to have to be operated in that manner, and then it's monitored on a regular basis, and careful measured changes as required to improve issues that may be discovered through the monitoring process.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess my question, hard to know where to weigh in here. There's so much here, and we haven't been on the same channel here for the last year and a half. So it's like playing catch up and reacquainting with everything. So I don't want to take it back with a question, but back on the structure when you were showing the inner workings of it, which appears to be quite complex and quite detailed. In fact, if I can, without offending anybody, it almost appears like a maze. And maybe I'm not looking at it properly, although I am seeing one head kind of nodding up and down. So I guess I'm not that far off on that. Is that for the control of the speed of the water that all the, I'll call it the guts of the inner workings of that is in place? Is that, or like, I'm just trying to grasp the goal here of getting more fish through, and please, I'm not trying to redesign the fishway. I just want to understand all the inner workings in there, where it just seems to me that a clearer, more open structure would have allowed more fish to get through. But maybe that's where the water speed comes in.
Yeah, that's the thing is water speed. So here I'm gonna share my screen again, Justin.
Thank you for taking me back.
Yeah, no problem. That's what it's here for. Yeah, so this is just again an end shot of the structure, just to make it a little simpler to talk about for your question here. So in effect, these are the main channels, or ultimately there's two main channels here. You can see sort of the main dividing wall between the two. Now, it does look like there's a lot of things in the way, and a lot of that has to do with structure. We need to hold gates, we need to hold stop logs, we need to make sure that people are safe if they're working in there. We need redundancy so that if one gate gets blocked, we have the ability to deal with water through the other gate. And this is where the large majority of flood water needs to pass to protect the town of Windsor. And because of that, velocity control is very difficult in this type of a structure. You can squeeze gates down as much as you want, but you still have concentrations of flow as it goes through smaller openings when you move those gates around. So that's where the fishways and the eel paths come into play. So in order to allow the water to flow back and forth as needed for stormwater flow and flood protection and all that stuff, we provided these zones on either side, which are controlled with baffles and things that roughen it, and the slopes that allow things to be managed, I guess, are necessary to. I guess you can imagine, if you look down from the top, I don't know if you've ever stood at the end of a culvert when it's blasting water out into a lake, but there's always sort of a jet that comes out straight out from the structure for some distance, and then it starts curling back on itself. So in this particular scenario, what these do is, and that's why you see a lot of these walls are extended, for example, like these couple, as well as these couple. These are extended to continue to extend that jet of water under flooding conditions, beyond the influence of the sides of the channel where fish tend to prefer to travel anyway, so that they can find their way in and out of the fishways as often as possible. And I think one of the key aspects here is that even in natural situations at low tide on these estuaries, the river flow in those estuaries tends to be quite fast, and it's not really very appealing for fish in most cases anyway. But as the tide starts to climb, or as it's just falling, and when the difference in the elevations on either side is less, than those are the periods where we're trying to maximize opportunities for fish to pass. So I don't know if that explains some of the questions, Jim. It's a pretty complicated question to answer, but I tried to give you the Cole's notes, I guess.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. And so the fishways that are going through, they're fairly straightforward. It's not, again, excuse my, just using the term maze, but it just appears to be that there were, corners that needed to be turned or whatever, but it's a straightforward pass for the fish, right?
It is straight through, generally speaking, and we try to make it as straight as we could without having things in the way. But like one of the things you'll see, for example, all of these features are rounded, as an example. That's why you'll see these are all not square, because you can see all the leading edges of features are rounded, because fish are going to get sucked in there, and they're going to end up going for a ride, and we're trying to do whatever we can to optimize the potential for fish to get through without getting harmed in the case that they end up in the wrong spot.
Any concerns or issues with this as it relates to people or people in boats or kayakers or anything like that getting sucked in or pulled through? Was there anything like that taken into account? We had a fellow back in the late 70s that I think actually went through the existing abattoir. I may have that a little bit wrong, but any protections in there to prevent anything like that happening?
I think that's a good question. I think the upstream, we've been assuming that the boom that's been in place for some time will remain in place in that location. But in this particular abattoir structure is quite a piece from the highway, and not an easy. It's not going to be an easy spot to access with gates and so on, and it's going to be quite a chore to get out here. So I would say that the majority of the structure from the outside is protected with handrails and whatnot to prevent people from falling in from up top. But the boat question, it's a good question. I would say that the arrangement of the structure with it not being a closed in barrel would probably reduce the risk. But that's not to say that if someone was being a dummy and got too close to this thing, they could get into trouble. But yeah, I'm not sure how to respond or how to answer that any further.
I guess the other question is that this sits up above the water. In other words, it's not something that you'd be able to float over the top of, right?
Oh no. This would be difficult to float across for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good on this for now. Thanks very much. Just one other question. If I go back to the question on sediment raised by Sheldon, I think, and in trying to find, I guess, that middle ground or that balance for that, there's going to be some more sediment coming in, but ideally to get more sediment going out. Which option provides the greatest propensity to keep the channel and the shore, the water portion of the inner lake and so forth, as deep as possible?
The freshwater option.
Sorry?
The freshwater option. The scenario that DFO has said it's not going to go.
Got it.
anytime you're allowing water in and out of the lake, it's going to bring sediment. The brackish scenario doesn't allow as much sediment in on a tide by tide basis. So, one would think that, over time, it will still build some sediment, but not as much. I think the tidal exchange scenario or dampened tidal scenario will let more in and out. But I think it's one thing to note is, although we do our best to predict these things, it's incredibly complicated, and essentially a best guess with the amount of information that we've been able to gather, and that's not to say that there isn't a lot of information available. There is. It's just highly variable everywhere you go in this entire system, from several hundred meters downstream to several hundred meters upstream. So although we've made predictions, it's it is just that, and the highly variable nature of the system really limits how much we can estimate in that respect.
Thank you for that. So with the DFO not being supportive of the fresh lake scenario, between the two, brackish and dampened, which one is going to leave the deepest channel, the greatest depth of water? It was the brackish lake, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the brackish scenario, the brackish lake scenario would provide the most water depth, just because we are holding it at a slightly higher elevation for the upper range of that limit. So,
is that, when you say holding it, is that because we're embargoing the water in some sense, or is it just based on the?
Yeah, to a degree, we're holding as much water as we can through the seasons to still operate the fishways. But the challenge is through the drier months, we have to let a little bit more in to kind of replenish the lake so that fishways can continue to operate at their sort of optimum levels.
I think that's good for me now. Thanks very much for letting me get back to the structure for those questions, and thank you.
Jim, Liz has her hand up.
This just question just came up in my mind during the talk of the sediment. Does anyone know if there's a market for some sort of commercial or industrial use for ocean sediment? I've seen stories about there being a shortage of sand in the world, and just makes me wonder, if there was a buildup of sedimentation, is it something that could be maybe an opportunity? Just putting that out there.
I mean, that's a pretty complex question. I think there's a lot of factors there, in terms of harvesting sand and the environmental implications associated with that too. So I'm not sure that that's been considered, and probably a difficult one to answer. I don't know.
Any other questions? Okay, I think you can move along, Colin.
Okay, Melissa, over to you. I will stop sharing, and Justin, you can jump back in there.
Thank you, Colin, for all of that.
No problem.
Just launching that now. It should be good to go, Melissa.
Perfect. Thanks, Colin, for foreshadowing part of this program. So before I get into it, I do want to characterize that this is the plan that we've developed for documenting fish passage. So we're looking at fish habitat, how fish are moving through the structure, like where they're kind of moving within the system. This is in addition to other post-construction monitoring that we're proposing for effects to the wetlands themselves, and some of the habitat changes that may be occurring within the upstream. So I just want to give that a little bit of a context, and then kind of now look at what we're doing for this program. So as part of this post-construction monitoring, we're looking at the much broader kind of Avon River area. And in thinking about how to design this program, We looked at a couple different approaches and ultimately ended up selecting the before and after control impact design. And what that means ultimately is we've designed a program that allows us to assess conditions prior to construction and after construction, and that we're also able to compare it to a reference site. And why this is so important, as for a long program, you can kind of understand that there could be some natural variability within the system, within the Avon system as a whole, like such as maybe years where lots of gas flow are returning, maybe years where there's not so much. Same what comes to other species such as eels. So it's really good to put that into context, not just in the Avon itself, but then also looking at it for other kind of neighboring watercourses. So we looked at a couple different options and are deciding to compare for this program the Avon River and the Kennecott River. The Kennecott, as you can kind of see on the drawing there, was also selected because it didn't have any known barriers, the same way that the Avon with the existing Abateaux has a current kind of constriction in the system. So those are the two water courses we're looking at. The program is proposed to be 7 years, with a 2-year pre-construction program, which will also overlap with the construction of the Abateaux itself, which will be constructed adjacent to the current Avon River alignment, and 5 years post-construction. So for that program, we're proposing that for both the Kennecott and for the Avon River. We've been working on this program iteratively with DFO because we understand its importance, and also its magnitude of scale is very unique for Atlantic Canada. Looking for comparable studies, it was challenging to find something that could even represent this and what we are kind of looking to achieve. Ultimately, there's a few main factors that we really want to consider. So we're looking for the movement of fish. So we wanted to understand how they're going to pass through the structure. And then we also want to get an idea of where they may be going. And there's 2 different survey methods that we may use for that. The existing groups that are doing monitoring within the system have found quite a bit of success with doing catch per unit effort to get an understanding of the types of species that may be found. We found that important to continue to incorporate that within this program, as well as looking at general fish habitat characteristics such as water quality and salinity, which also provides a context into the operation procedures. Justin, if you want to move on to the next piece. So to kind of give a magnitude of scale of showing some of where we're proposing some of these sampling locations, we have prepared a subsequent draft plan, and we're looking for feedback from DFO ultimately on this plan. But just to kind of give you a scale, is we're not just looking at putting receivers just at the new Abateaux structure or the old Abateaux structure. We're also looking at other key aspects, either up or downstream. So this is just focused preliminary on the Avon River and upstream of the proposed structure. But if you can kind of see the areas denoted in red, these are where we're looking for pit tags, which we're going to be using to determine the actual movement or passage of fish through different structures. Very reliable and frequently used and currently used within the broader system. If you want to move on to the next one, Justin, thanks. So we're also looking at where and how fish are moving. So it's a different application than just whether or not a fish has, passed a threshold, but we're going to be looking at using acoustic servers. The interesting part about acoustic servers is they allow to kind of understand where a being that is tagged may be within a 3D space. So this is really important for understanding how fish like to move through the structure. from a fish behavior perspective. We know some fish like to move, travel along the bottom, some like to move along the surface, and some may move mid-column. So this will give us an understanding of how fish are approaching the structure, where they may be as they're at the structure, if they're choosing to wait to pass, maybe they're just there to forage. It gives us a little bit of an understanding. And then also to show the complexity, we're proposing to do some as part of the before study and then implementing new sampling locations once the full infrastructure is in place. You'll see on kind of some of them, they'll reside there for both the before and after study. So some of these receivers will be put into place, used for a period of time, and may even need to be replaced throughout the program. So this is kind of the emphasis on the Avon system. Perfect, Justin, you want to move on to the next one? That's great. I apologize for anyone with color sensitivities. I can try and describe this a bit better, and let me know, put your hand up if you can't see that. So looking at the Kennecook River as well, we're looking at using similar approaches. We want to know what's passing. We want to know how it's passing. Like, is it from a behavior perspective? Is it where kind of is it positioned within the water column? As well as we want to get an understanding of general fish habitat, such as the salinity, dissolved oxygen, suspended sediment, and temperature. Temperature is a very important part that's going to be considered in both, and can be actually a thermal cue for fish knowing when to pass. That's also really important for one of the things Liz brought up. You know, what happens if they show up 2 weeks early? Temperature cues are really, really helpful. And as Colin had kind of stated, the new structure that we're proposing has passage available 24/7 through the fishways and eel ramp, which is dedicated for operation. So just for a little bit of color coding, the pit tag arrays, which are going to be used for confirming that if a fish has moved past a threshold, you can see them better in a vertical kind of dark line. The sediment and salinity type probes, similar color to that in green, I guess. These locations are not finalized, but kind of tentatively proposed. Final selection will be determined based on, you know, water depth and if the equipment can be properly affixed. The ones that hopefully are popping in a little bit better yellow are the acoustic receivers, which will give us a little bit of an understanding of the 3D space in which fish are moving. For anyone who has a color sensitivities, does that okay? All right, perfect. So as mentioned, the program is proposed to start, you know, following DFO's initial approval of the plan, and feedback is being received from the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia on the plan. That work is currently ongoing, and discussions are continuously moving forward on that. The plan will remain in place for approximately 5 years after the construction of the structure. And then ongoing monitoring may be determined depending on the findings. I imagine a lot of the temperature, salinity, TSS probes may be implemented as part of the adaptability of the structure, but maybe not in the quantity. And I think that was kind of what I had for the high level plan. I know, unlike Colin's stuff, also very difficult to absorb in such a small space, but is there any questions?
Please put your hands up if you have any questions. Liz?
Hi, thanks, Melissa. What would happen if you started noticing something really bad in your observations over the 5 years after it's operational, what do you do then?
As part of the operational plan of the structure, like there is going to be certain kind of checks. If there was that's for this particular program, what's really important with the patrol, like the BACI or the before after control impact, is it allows us to have like a qualitative and a quantitative assessment of what's going on. And it also allows us to understand what's going larger in a larger system. Like, did we have a year where there was, differences seen across the board, or differences in fish passage attributed to the structure itself? So that was one of the important parts of selecting the study type that we did. Throughout the monitoring program, if we do see changes in fish passage, there is that adaptability of the structure that Colin had kind of mentioned of the bookends of the ability of the structure, allowing more or less water in, changing maybe the fishways if necessary. So there is a lot of adaptability still with the structure, that if like during the monitoring, if we were seeing that it wasn't successful, that we could have kind of that adaptive management approach. And as part of the operation of the structure, I'm imagining there will be continued adaptive management principles.
Yeah,
Colin, if you want to jump in on to continue that, yeah.
Quick response to that. I think one of the key things with the structure is the fishways themselves have been designed so that they can be completely gutted. So you can pull everything out of them and put new structure in them if necessary. So, that I don't expect that would have to be done, but I think that's really what the goal is of this structure, is so that you don't have to completely rebuild the entire thing. You can take out a component and make it better to address problems. So I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is if the data does show a significant issue, there'll be analysis to determine, is it an issue or is it just a global thing, like as Melissa had suggested with the whole region, and then I would assume that's going to go through DFO. And they're going to look at it, and then there's probably a design phase. Okay, what are we going to do to change to try to improve this, figure out what the problem is, and come up with a solution. And I think that's what the process would be. Exactly who drives that process, and how long it takes. I think that's another big question. Because I think small changes to try to solve problems, are probably the sort of the first step. If issues are found, and then continue to elevate as or escalate as required, I guess would be kind of the typical design process.
Thanks for that. It's good to know that a larger area is being studied, and because very often problems might not occur at the site, but somewhere down the water. Thanks.
Liz, Colin Hines.
Thanks, Ken. Just a question. I'm curious, is there some species specific monitoring that's going to be captured in this? I'm thinking of, I know in my neck of the world, we got Gaspro and smelts, and I know there's sea trout, and there's all these different species that have been coming up here over the last numbers of years. Is this post-construction survey going to capture some of that species specific information? Can you speak to that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. As part of the different like acoustic and pit tagging programs, we are proposing to tag, and I apologize while I just pull up the list and the numbers. We're looking at for the acoustic tagging, so this is the one that gives us the 3D space. We're looking at Gaspereau, tom cod, sea run brook trout, and Atlantic salmon. Not tagging eels for that one is because we know kind of generally when they're going to pass through the structure that they're going to be using the eel ramp. So, and then when we are looking at the pit tag arrays, we're looking at American eel, American shad, sea run brook trout, Atlantic tomcod, Gaspereau, both alewife, blue black herring, rainbow smelt, sea run trout, brook or brown if available, and striped sea bass. The reason why you might be seeing an emphasis a little bit on this trout is this watershed, or generally the Atlantic salmon, not known to occur in the area. They are an endangered species, so we're using them almost as a surrogate, to actually tagging them, the Atlantic salmon. So it'll give us an idea of, based on their swimming abilities, they're very comparable, that they would be able to move through the structure if in the area. So that's why we selected some of those. And what's important to note is that it's not just like a one-time tagging. Like, these are groups that will be consistently tagged annually, and can also be documented during this catch per unit effort sampling as well. So for if they move through the structure as through some of the catch per unit effort and tagging exercises, we're actually able to recapture them, whether or not they're moving through the structure or not. It gives us an idea of where they may occur. So kind of excited about it.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? I have one, Melissa. It's not really a question, but what I would just suggest is that perhaps at our next meeting, and I don't know when that would be, but it probably, whenever it is, it probably would be useful. I'd like to get a better idea of where all of this data is flowing. For instance, if it's providing a feedback loop that allows for changing the operations, that's one thing, as you've mentioned. Like, how often does it go to DFO? Is there, when it goes to DFO, is there, you know, a defined way that it's going to be assessed, and you know, some sort of system there, and also whether that data is going to be publicly available. So I don't, as I say, I don't think it, I need an answer now, but it would be nice to see sort of a diagram that shows how that data is being managed, how it flows and everything, so people can understand it.
Mm-hmm. As part of the plan that's still under review, we have proposed a reporting schedule. The advantage of what we're proposing within the schedule is it has a series of interim reports as well. That allows us to get maybe a better understanding of how something maybe occurred within like the spring and summer of the first year of the program, post-construction. It allows us to understand if there's any changes that we need to have in place prior to the next, you know, prior to the next spring. As you can appreciate, there's a lot of information that we're collecting. It does take a long time to go through analysis. So some of the staggered approaches to reporting that we've put forward to DFO for consideration, consider some of those pieces. One interesting thing that I haven't had the opportunity to mention yet is a lot of the technologies, frequencies that we'd be using for these different arrays. We're aligning them with other programs that are occurring within, you know, the Numinus Basin. So it also allows us the opportunity to, if fish are tagged as part of another program but intersect into our areas, it allows us to record that fish and record that movement, which is exciting. And I believe we'll be working to see have this data provided to kind of a larger network, but I leave that to Public Works to define what their commitments are for that.
Thank you. Jim, did you have your hand up? Or I think you did, but now it's down. Jim, you're on mute, Jim.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken. And I wasn't sure if it fit in with the question here for Melissa, if it goes to Public Works, or, but I guess the question generally is where we might be at timing wise with the project, and not looking for the total completion of the high and everything, but one of the bigger challenges we've had here is what we do as it relates to the lake, river, fish, recreation, and so forth, and where we might be in that interaction, I guess, with DFO, who ultimately end up deciding what this sort of looks like, and it, for Melissa's comments, there would be involved in the measurement post event and so on. Do we have any sense of timing as to where that would be? And I guess I think there was a comment about comment made in the House last week about some delay on technical. Not again, I don't know if that's highway or if that's fish or what technical is as it relates to this piece of work, which is so vast. But is there anybody that can comment on that by way of timing overall and what we may be looking at here, that from a community standpoint, we can sort of get to some kind of a resolution? I know there's still folks waiting, regardless of which their preference is for what we have here, but you've got a lot of people here that are very vested and concerned and wanting to see what's going to take place with this. Is anybody out there able to comment on that feels?
Jim, I think Justin was just about to kind of look at the next steps, which highlighted some of these timelines. So I guess maybe if you want, or maybe it was Mark who were tackling that bit, but I do see what the next slide is up, and that might address some of your questions.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Melissa, and that kind of segues nicely into our final slide here this evening. So,
Justin, just before you do, it's 8:01, and I just I always ask when we get to the scheduled time of ending the meeting, if it's okay with everybody, if we continue on here for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. It looks like everybody's okay with that. Colin Hines has his hand up though. Did you want to speak to that, Colin?
Yeah, just a question. Yeah, no, I'm good. We can go all night. I'm fine. But just a question on the monitoring, because I know the pre-construction monitoring, you're looking at 2-year pre-construction, which is, as we're going forward now. But is there any thought, because obviously there's issues related to fish pastures, and there's been fish going up the river for, since the causeway was put in initially. So is there any thought to sort of assimilate some of that, I guess, longer than 2 years ago information into that pre-construction survey data? Because I know like the way the river is being operated right now is significantly different than it was operated for the last 50 years or so. And I know there's, from anecdotal evidence I have that, the last year, particularly from a sea trout perspective, wasn't a good year. So is there any thought to have that pre-construction stretched a little bit on that side to sort of get a feel? And I don't know how much data there is from that period, but I just wondered if there was a thought about, maybe having a look at some of that information on what was going on with fish before the change in the way the operation are for that river system.
Justin, I can tackle the first part of the old data and how it's incorporated into the new stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's true. Like there's the study that occurred in the past were really critical in identifying the species to tag, helping us understand the time of years in which they're passing, which is all great and really helped advise the program. Where it becomes a little bit complicated about using some of the data from previously is we kind of have to have them set up similarly so you can kind of compare like a Macintosh to a Macintosh rather than like a Gala to a Macintosh. So that's what really led to the importance of having this additional information for part of this this pre-construction. So we've tentatively slated it for 2 years, but like we'll be working with DFO to understand the review of this program, when we're able to start it, and ultimately when the construction kind of moves forward as well. So it may be you know, very close, or cutting it very close to the 2-year mark, but we'll be working closely with DFO to get the program started as soon as we can, and run it as long as we can through construction and prior to construction. So.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Hey, Justin.
Yeah, so just kind of to bring this a bit to a close and answer some of the outstanding questions, and appreciate all the questions we've heard tonight. Hopefully most people have got their questions in as we've kind of paused at certain points through the slide deck. But in terms of our next steps, the DFO authorization and some of what was referenced there about some outstanding technical information. Yes, we are in the process, or CBCL's team is in the process of completing some final modeling and assessment results at the moment, which is very close to being ready to submit to DFO. We expect to be, you know, within the next couple weeks, we'll be getting that in their hands, and we anticipate that should address most of their outstanding comments and questions. So once that's in their hands, and also with the MIGMA as part of our consultation process to review, DFO will assess whether the application is deemed complete and move on through the next steps of their review. Now, they have paused the review of the application at this time due to consultation. They do have the ability within their act to pause their kind of timeframes on their application review process. So the length of time it requires to kind of satisfy the duty to consult is a bit up in the air. We don't know exactly how long that will take, but we have arranged a series of technical meetings to help hopefully expedite the process and make sure that we address any outstanding concerns. As noted, we'll be initiating the 2-year pre-construction monitoring program as soon as we get an indication that it you know, is to the satisfaction of DFO and we are close to an approval. So we hope that we would be able to get that underway either later this spring or early summer. And that would take at least 2 years. As Melissa mentioned, we'd start that as soon as possible and then run right until the new Apatow is basically ready to be open and operational. So it could be a bit longer than that. We're on track to be tender ready this construction season. So most of the concerns right now are more around the operations of the Apatow. We don't expect them to change the physical design of the Apatow or the bridges at this point. So we're advancing all the design packages kind of simultaneously with DFO's review so that everything is ready to go and we can hit the ground running at the point that we get an approval. As I noted, the actual approval date's a bit unknown, so I've indicated there to be determined. And then the construction period is going to be somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 years from the point of approval. So if we hit the ground running this summer, we would expect to hopefully have everything complete or mostly complete by the end of 2024. That's where we would hit timeline wise. We are continuing to consult with the MIGMA, as I've noted, as well as engagement with the CLC, and we certainly don't intend another 1.5 year gap between meetings. Hopefully, you know, within a few months, once we get an indication as to where we're headed with DFO, and hopefully an approval in hand, we'll be providing certainly an update around that time. So we'll likely look to something maybe later this spring, early or before we get into kind of the summer vacation period, I would probably caution to say. So that's basically where we're at. I can kind of leave that next step slide up in case there are any final questions kind of about the timelines or the process or any that didn't get addressed earlier on.
Questions? Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. And thank you everybody for the information shared and presented here this evening. It's really greatly appreciated. And I know that the members of the community will appreciate getting to see it as this goes out in the next day or so. The question I do have is one that's a burning one, I guess, and we've been trying to chase this down over the last year. And it has to do with what was commented on earlier about the sandbars or the dust bars or the mud flats, whatever we want to refer to them, but the dust that kicks up here. A year ago, we already had a dust storm at this point in time. I think it was the last week of March, we may have had one, and the ministerial order hadn't been in place very long at that point. And so we've asked about the ability to get more water brought into the lake at this time. And I know it's a complicated matter too, because you've got transportation, highway, things going in that works. But is there anything that can be done or that we can do to try and find a way to alleviate that dust that's impacting residential communities, downtown business, along the core of this central area that anybody might have in mind, even if it was letting more water in for 2 days a week or something. I don't know, is there some way to be able to get, and maybe Kevin, you may have to, this may be something that Kevin has to speak to for control of water coming in the gates, but can anybody comment on that? On what we might do to control that dust?
Thank you, Jim. So unfortunately, we're not able to let any more water in than the 10-minute saltwater intrusion that's required by DFO. There are structural limitations on the structure itself, and it's not designed for tidal intrusion. And once, if we were to leave a gate open, the gate would have to stay open for that full tide cycle. There's no opportunity to close it during the tide cycle, and the pressure on the gate would exceed its design limitations. We had an engineering assessment that was done to provide that background information, and that's where we're resisting on, is on operational limitations of the structure. We are exploring. I believe there's some discussions about seeding in the area and seeing what other opportunities might be available, and we're interested in if anyone has any suggestions on what's there. And DFO has suggested that they're also going to be looking at some options. So do understand the concern and understand what the community is going through, but unfortunately, it's not a solution that can be provided by the existing structure.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the information.
Any other questions? Justin, I just on this the schedule here. If there is a delay with the DFO regulatory approvals and that sort of thing, I would ask that perhaps you guys could let us know, even if it's just through a memo or whatever, saying, hey, we're still waiting here, just so there's some explanation as time goes on of why there might not be a meeting being called. So we've got a better understanding of that. Because I recognize that these delays are out of your control, but just to keep us apprised of it, it's better to have an understanding of of why we're not meeting again, why we're not getting more information.
Well, that's a good point, Ken. I think we can certainly commit to providing at least an interim update if there are any delays.
Okay, Shelley has her hand up. Shelley?
Hi, thank you. That's a good idea, Kim. I'm wondering if we could set like a time frame. Let's say if there's been nothing in 4 months, or I don't know, every 2 months. I don't know what's reasonable to have communication back and say we're still waiting, rather than just wait till something happens. I mean, if there's a circle back or a check-in at a specific regulated time frames, maybe that would be a way to do it.
Ken, could we maybe coordinate like a quarterly email perhaps, and you could nudge us, we could work together to maybe put together a bit of an update, at least quarterly perhaps, just to provide at least an interim update between meetings if they don't get scheduled.
Okay, so I'll put that in my calendar and we can figure out when that should be. I guess first of all, we'll figure out when that should be, then I'll put it in my calendar, but I'll let everybody on the committee know when we would expect that as well. So hopefully that will help. I don't see any other questions, and so perhaps we can adjourn, but before we do, I would just like to say that as the facilitator, when you're doing these Zoom meetings and you get up around 20 to 30 people, it can be difficult to handle. But it's really easy when there's a lot of cooperation by the people in the meeting. And I really appreciate all of the cooperation we've had today by everybody. It's great to see people, and hopefully we'll get to see your smiling faces sometime soon too. So with that, thanks very much. I'll get this recording up. I think last meeting I said I'd have it before I went to bed, but it was a lot more difficult than I thought. So today I'm going to say I'll have it by the end of day tomorrow. So, all right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Good night, everyone.
Bye now.